Hi, I'm Tom Stevenson, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm a professor of construction management, and this channel's all about construction. Today, we're going to be continuing our series on the 8 areas of waste. So I've already shot 5 videos, and we have a few more to go after this particular one. Today's topic is going to be inventory. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please consider that and contribute to the community. Ask questions, and if you've got points that add value to the discussion, please go ahead. All right, so let's get started. So, the 8 areas of waste that we're discussing in this series spell the word downtime. And we're looked at defects, which is really a big area in construction, overproduction, wait time, non-utilized talent, and today, after we talked about transportation in the last section, we're looking at inventory. Inventory, I think most people know what that is. It's just that you got a lot of stuff, and this is the stuff that you need, and you want to have it nearby so that you don't have to wait for it. So that's referring back to the wait time that we looked at in an earlier session. Well, how we plan our projects and have materials delivered to the site is very, very important. And having the right amount of materials where we want it, and that ties to transportation, the previous topic, and available when we need it is vitally important if you don't want to delay your project. There's a whole bunch of things that happen when we think about if we have too much inventory on site, right? So first off, it may tie up capital because you're paying to get this material delivered, and you may or may not be able to bill for it depending on your contract requirements and progress payments, etc. So that has the potential to tie up a company's capital, and everybody has a finite amount of liquidity, right? The ability to pay your suppliers, the ability to pay your subcontractors, the ability to pay your employees. And if you're not able to do that, then you're out of business, right? So that's very important to manage that effectively for cash flow purposes. Increased labor cost. Well, why might it have increased labor cost, having more stuff that you need on site? Well, you have to consider that it's probably going to be in your way if you have too much stuff. And if you have to move it around several times, that's going to waste a lot of time. I always use the example of, do you want to paint in an empty room, or do you want to paint in a room full of furniture? Or in this case, do you want to paint in a room filled with stuff that is going to get in your way? I definitely want to prefer painting in an empty room. I'll be much more efficient and effective. So very often that means you got to move stuff around just so that you can get access to something, and then you put it somewhere else, and then it's in somebody else's way. So we have to be very cognizant of that. Increased labor costs can lead to material obsolescence. Well, if we order something too early, that can tie to perhaps where something has a certain shelf life to it, that basically now we can't use it anymore. Or maybe it's a piece of equipment that needs to have a certification every so many months, and you've had it there longer than those months. Maybe it's a warranty issue, that the warranty starts when it was delivered to the site, and now it hasn't been installed for 6 months to a year, so there's hardly any or no warranty left on it. These are things that can come into play. It can also lead to damage. That just simply means that it's there. Well, somebody can hit it with a forklift. Somebody can, like in the illustration here, you've got stuff going back and forth all over the place. Something could easily become damaged, right? So these are some of the factors that are excess inventory. Having it ahead of time can cause problems. And some other consequences of excess inventory, right? Because of the spatial requirements. Maybe you've got to rent extra basically boxes, right? We call them C-cans, right? So basically the metal container boxes, and store them in it. But that has a monthly cost to it. So that's an excess storage cost that we don't necessarily need, perhaps. Higher risk of theft. Well, it's there. Now it can be stolen. If it's not there, it can't be stolen. So that's for sure. And as I mentioned earlier, cash flow issues, where again, that could be affecting your liquidity. So some examples: over ordering materials just in case, right? So just in case we're going to order a bunch of extra stuff. But if you're doing that for a whole bunch of different things, or if each trade on your site is doing that, now you got all this extra stuff and it starts to compound on each other. It might not even be just one trade. It could be the culmination of a few trades over ordering stuff, right? And of course, if you've tied up that money from a business perspective, your capital, your limited capital, that might restrict you from your other projects or your ability to conduct other projects because your capital is all tied up here. So that's a big one too from a business perspective. There's different layers we have to think about. We have to think about the project direct costs. We also have to think about the business overall, which is operating a number of projects at the same time and has overhead that it has to work with. So yes, it's fun, this AI tool, DALL-E. I just said, well, show me a office with a T-bar ceiling grid, show lots of drywall and ceiling panels and door hardware and other things, and it comes up with this image that maybe it's although I have seen sites like this where it's just jam-packed with stuff, makes it very, very difficult to do things. And so this may be a little bit on the excessive side, but not really in a lot of cases. Maybe instead of materials, you've got garbage there, right? That's building up with materials. And then you've got this, real mess. And psychologically too, I don't think people work as well when everything is so cluttered that they can't move around. It's just kind of deflating psychologically. So it's not mutually exclusive. I think by now, if you've been watching the other videos, and if you haven't, I'm going to put in the description the ones that we've shot so far, going back. Check out my playlists. On the playlist, I have a lot of videos in construction, different topics. You probably under this heading, I think I got about 60 under project management tips, but I have whole courses that I teach at colleges and universities. And you can always go to other videos to get some background. But in this case, I do have in the description the previous videos that we've shot, and we will be coming up with the next few in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But defects, well, definitely defects can mean that we've had something delivered, something got damaged, it got installed, and then it's a problem. Or we were moving stuff and it hit something when we were moving it that was already finished, and now we have to redo that work. Overproduction, well, ordering more than what we need, and then having it there, and then not needing it, and then having to get it taken away or thrown out, or worse, we're storing it back at our shop, and then that's just taking up space. Wait time, well, the material's there, it's sitting there, it's waiting to be installed. That's wait time, all right, big one there. Non-utilized talent, well, how come we're getting all these problems, right? Well, it's because we don't have good communication systems going on. We're not thinking far enough ahead. And if we have ideas or we have constraints, we're not identifying them and working through them so that we don't end up with this kind of situation here. Motion, well, you're moving stuff back and forth, wasted motion. That's going to be the next topic, which is really an interesting one because we talk about productivity levels and all the aspects that wasted motion ties into, but it also ties into this because we have to move things around. And extra processing. So if we have extra steps that are unnecessary, well, it's an extra step if we have to move something. It's an extra step if we have to take it back to our shop to store it. It's an extra step if we have to order an extra C can to store it in. So these are all extra processing points that we could remove. And if we remove extra steps, we remove waste. So they're all kind of interconnected in a lot of ways. Why does inventory waste occur? Well, poor forecasting, inaccurate ordering, fear of being short of something. And I get that. And you got to start somewhere. But one of the places that you start is good, effective inventory management So you recognize that, well, we did order too much. Okay, so what did we do here that led to this? And what can we do to prevent this from happening again? That we kind of get into in the overproduction stuff, where we've got extra steps and we look at, well, what things did we do that we shouldn't have done or should have done? And so that's tied to the lack of inventory management systems. And as I said, it's a fear factor. It's a fear factor. You get a little bit nervous. Now, some things you want to make sure you got enough extra of. I don't want to be short a half a meter of concrete, right? But at the same time, I don't want to have ordered 3 meters too much of concrete. So you want to make sure that you've got enough of a buffer that you're okay with something like that. Other cases, you got to look at, well, could we order this in smaller batches? And then as we get closer to where we are coming towards the end, have more accuracy on what's left that we need to order. That way we don't have a lot of extra. It generally means that you may have some extra costs in your deliveries, but small batches in lean construction will immensely improve your schedules. Like, I mean, immensely improve your schedules. This is one of the principles of lean construction, is to have a continuous flow, but to also have small batches that allows for quick learning. I'm going to learn if we ordered this much and this is what we expected for it. I'm going to very quickly see that, well, that wasn't quite enough. So the next one, we're going to order more. Rather than I order a ton of stuff, it all comes, and then we're waiting till the end, and then we find out we ordered way too much or way too little. All right, so this way we'll get the feedback a lot quicker. It's iterative. So yeah, example, inadequate communication between project managers, suppliers leads to suppliers sending materials before required. If we're not really in good communication, if our procurement contract methods haven't thought some of these elements through, we're going to run into reactive mode. We want to be proactive on these items, and we want to iterate as we go. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the systems. But basically, if suppliers are pushing stuff to your site just because they have it ready and you're accepting it, then that's going to put you in a very reactive mode. We call this push in lean technology and terminology, as opposed to pulling it to the site as you need it. So big difference. Suppliers got this, it's coming, but we're not ready. Or we're delaying this coming till we need it. We're making you deliver it in smaller deliveries. We've let you know this ahead of time. We're not all of a sudden telling you at the back end, because then that puts your suppliers, that puts your subcontractors in a negative position. It's a collaborative process. Just in time. So push is just pushing it out. Just in time is pulling, as I said. So you're pulling it to the site. Now in construction, a lot of times, I actually like this lean term. It's kind of debated, but I think just in time, we're not going to have it like exactly just in time in construction, because we're not like the Toyota production system where we have long, big contracts that we've developed as strong a relationships as in the manufacturing sector. But last responsible moment kind of gives you a little bit more leeway to say, okay, this subtrade, we work with tons of projects. They know how we work. We know how they work. We're in constant communication, collaboration. If they say it's going to be there on that day, it'll be there on that day. Well, then that's fine. We've got a very good communication. That would be very close to just in time. Another trade, it's a key item. It's being manufactured by this supplier. We don't always deal with them. We want to give ourselves a little bit of buffer so we know it's there when we need it. So maybe you're getting it delivered a week ahead of time or 2 days ahead of time. Ideally, you're making it as close as possible to when you need it. But you may have some variation in that dependent on the relationship, the confidence level that you have in that trade or that supplier. That's where I pull in another lean term, Pareto 2080. There's probably 20% of my trades and vendors that are going to take or cause 80% of my issues. And that also means I've got probably 80% of them that I've got good, strong relationships, and they're not causing many issues, that I'm going to focus on those 20% that do. And by doing that, I'm going to give myself a little bit of more leeway with the last responsible moment aspect, or I'm going to be really closely in communication to make sure it's going to happen. So that's important too, to identify those things, because you don't have time to do it all, right? You don't have time to do it all, but you pick your battles. So how do we spot waste on our sites? Again, this is this AI tool that I said, okay, well, because I've had some clients recently on subways and LRT. So I said, I want some LRTs and show me a lot of stuff going on, and basically gives you an idea of sites, but how important it is to control the site logistics aspect. So overstocked material, if we see a bunch of stuff that's sitting there, we might say, okay, we have too much of that, or it's too close to where the work is already. We may want to have it stored further out or some other storage area, so we decouple it and then we get it moved here as we need it, right? So there's combinations of strategies that can be involved. Materials becoming damaged, that's the environmental side too. If it's exposed to the weather for any period of time, a lot of materials will start to wear already. You got to remember that whatever it is you're building, it's starting to wear out the second you install it. People new in construction, younger people don't recognize that. I recognize that because I see projects that I did 40 years ago and I see how they've been wearing out, right? Or they've already done their highest and best use and they've been torn down for some bigger or newer purpose. So we have to keep that in mind, that if something gets done way ahead of time or installed way ahead of time, that starts to wear out. And if it's not on the critical path, that becomes a problem. Or if we've ordered something like our train cars months ahead of time because we wanted to make sure that we had it, and then our project becomes years behind schedule, then this stuff sitting somewhere that we have rented space, and it's going to need to be recertified because there's certain certification protocols. Once you get into rail authorities, there's all kinds of protocols and regulatory requirements to ensure the safety of the public. And so then that's another whole layer. So you got to be considering these things too. And it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. So material stored in disorganized or unsafe ways. Well, there's the whole safety factor. I didn't even get into that, right? So from those previous pictures and things like that, if you've got stuff, excess stuff, well, it's a tripping hazard, or it could be an accident. Something could tip over on somebody, etc. And of course, we've said the materials and the material warranties expiring, that would be, or recertifications. Those are examples of having something, especially something mechanical there too soon. That's where you run into those kind of issues. So, what are some of the things that we can do? Implement just-in-time inventory systems to minimize on-site stock. So what am I saying with that? Because I just said last responsible moment. Part of what I'm saying with that is have effective site logistics plans. Have them updated constantly, because a site logistics plan works for a period of time, but then as your project progresses, the availability of space changes on your site. So you have to look at the various stages and phases of construction and come up with the most effective site logistics plan. And that includes laydown areas and storage. And how do we minimize the spatial needs for that by not having an overly abundant amount of inventory, while at the same time not having such little inventory that we run out of things and then we have workers waiting for work. Workers waiting for work means they don't have materials or they don't have something that they need. So you have to work on that very carefully. But a site logistics up-to-date collaborative plan can be very helpful in managing that process. The other thing that we can do is basically work with our suppliers and our subcontractors and develop a system like the LPS, Last Planner System, that helps us in that collaborative model, very iterative, identify possible constraints, keep a constraint log, identify it, and manage it very carefully. So if there's something that we can see as an issue, from a logistics point of view, from a inventory point of view, we're capturing that, we're discussing that, we're correcting that, right? And because you can't forecast and see everything far ahead. So we've got to manage that too as the work becomes closer. And that's where planned percent complete, PPC, comes into play, where you're looking at, well, how many do we plan to get done this week and how many did we do? And we're managing that process from a further out scale, which might be our milestone schedule, to our 6-week look ahead schedule, to our weekly, and our feedback loop with our daily huddles. So lean practices also such as KanBan. So if it's something that you're going to be using for a long period on your site, you can set up systems where once inventory gets down to a certain point, new materials coming in, right? So you've got this sort of structured that as your inventory goes down, there's a trigger that pulls more material to the site. And that would be like a KanBan type system, falling back on the Toyota production system that developed that system. So these are all points and areas that you can think about from an inventory perspective that can definitely help you improve on your site. The 8 areas of waste, as I said, it's not one thing that's going to make a difference. It's a myriad of little things and adjustments that you make from wherever you are right now. And if you're working for a company and they don't really do, lean practices, there's all kinds of things in here that you can do to make your life easier. And that's the idea. But if your company has adopted lean, then these are some of the practices. This is the logic, and this is the aspect of what they're trying to create, is a project that flows better, adds more value to the clients, and reduces waste while respecting people in the process. So hopefully you've enjoyed this short video. I'm Tom Stevenson, Professor of Construction Management. If you like this video, click like, and don't forget to subscribe. It really does help build the community, and I really, really do appreciate it. So we'll see you next time. Bye for now.